What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Corey Alston Theorem. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of a glimpse. I'm going to show you a trailer for this upcoming documentary that's coming out on Peacock called Diddy, the Making of a Bad Boy. And we're going to look at an article on it as well that kind of gives some critics' perspectives on what you can expect. Is it all that it's going to be hyped up to be, or is it just going to be the same old repetitive nature of the accusations and the former history that we've already heard of Diddy? All right. And so I think we might be a little disappointed when it comes to that documentary. So we're going to talk about that. One of the things that's going to be discussed real quickly from me, because I like to analyze things. You know, I'm by no means a Diddy sympathizer. I can assure you of that. But I do like to know what makes people like this tick. You know, same reason I like to watch Snapped or Buried in the Backyard. My wife thinks it's so weird that I like to watch stuff like that. I just find it fascinating. You know, the mind of a killer. Am I a killer? Does that make me a killer? Of course not. But I am fascinated by that sort of thing. Likewise, I'm fascinated about what makes somebody like Sean Diddy Combs tick. Maybe it's the background in human development and psychology that I have in college. I don't know. Either way, we're going to look at some talk about Diddy's mother, which I think explains quite a lot as to why Diddy grew up the way he did and became the type of person that he did. Also, we're going to hear a quick story about his father for as long as he was in Diddy's life. The tragic ending there, we're going to talk a little bit about that, which I think, again, explains a lot of what ended up happening with Diddy. And then this one was really interesting to me because this has to do with an R&B artist that I've actually met this guy before. And his name's Al B. Sure. And I don't know if you guys probably don't know this because it's not something I really talk about on the channel, but I come from a musical background, and back in the day, and when I say back in the day, I mean in the 90s, myself and three other guys were in kind of a boy band together, and we actually did some pretty decent things, ended up showcasing for Sony Records in New York. At one time, recorded quite a few demos there, and one time when I was in New York, the producer we were working with was lifelong buddies with this guy, Al B. Sure, and this story has specifically to do with Diddy, Al B. Sure, and Diddy's mother of his children and ex, Kim Porter, who Al B. Sure happened to be dating at that time. And this story, when you hear this story, it's gonna click for you. You're gonna be like, damn, yeah, yeah. You can see where this dude, you could see what was already starting to unfold with P. Diddy way back then, you know, and this was a long time ago that this story takes place. But we're going to look at that. And for any of you who don't know who Al B. Sure is, take a quick listen. This is Al B. Sure. Yeah, I mean, come on, you know that song. So the first thing we're going to look at is, as promised, we're going to look at the trailer. Okay, so check out the trailer for this upcoming documentary called Diddy, the Making of a Bad Boy. Here we go.
Sean Combs is a monster.
I want to speak about this now because I've witnessed everything.
I think Sean Combs can get away with anything.
I've known Sean since he was 4 years old. That's my little bro.
He already knew what he wanted.
I can be your manager, just give me a chance.
I went to a lot of puffy parties. These were the parties that you needed exclusive access to get into.
He thought that if people fear him, they respect him.
Honestly, I didn't want to be around him unless there was cameras.
Nobody's shooting me. Nobody's shooting me. Nobody's shooting me.
When Puff was around, it was like, uh-oh, get it together or this could be over.
You got me acting crazy in front of all these people.
Something is not right with this.
I've been with Sean for quite a while, and I've captured a lot of moments. Anytime the studio or any rooms is red, it's making love and sex. Some of the ones who went in the room, for sure, they were underage.
They said they could ship me off and sell me to anyone.
How did this superstar music mogul become an alleged monster?
And I can show you how we have fun and stay out of jail, too.
Right? And of course, they make it seem like really engrossing, and like, oh, I gotta see that. I think the critiques of it have to do with the fact that it makes it seem like they're about to unleash all of this information and personal information and footage and things like that of stuff that we've not heard yet. It's all new, just now coming out sort of material. And it seems like that's not actually the case, that a lot of it is just things that are repetitive, things that are repeated, that we've all already been hearing for the past several months since P. Diddy's initial arrest. And as we know, things continue to get piled on. At this point, people are just piling on Diddy. I heard another accusation just today where he and a couple of his associates brutally drugged and raped a 16-year-old. And again, this supposedly happened years and years and years ago. It's one of those things where this person's just now coming forward. I'm not even going to go into it because, if you say anything leaning towards the fact that some people at this point are just being opportunists, people will accuse you of being a Diddy sympathizer. People accuse you of being a grape apologist or something, because I would dare insinuate that there are people out there that are seeing how Diddy is locked up and is unable to fend for himself right now, are now coming forward because they had some sort of interaction with Diddy in the past and they're looking to try to get paid some money. If you dare insinuate that there are people out there doing that, the internet just completely flips. Oh, you're a grape apologist. Well, people want him to pay for all the depraved things that he did. And you're here defending it. I'm not defending anything. Okay? I just want to be clear about that. I don't condone or condemn anything that I talk about on this channel. It's just an opinion by a guy who has a YouTube channel. That's it. That's all this is. Just an opinion. And you know what they say about opinions? It's like and everybody has one, right? All right, so just as long as we're clear on that. The first thing I want to look at is just a little bit of this article, and it talks about Diddy's mother. And from a psychological perspective, and having a degree in child development / human development, I do know that we are all kind of products of our habitat, products of our environment, right? If it's a nurturing environment, we tend to grow up to be nurturing type, caring individuals, right? If it's not a nurturing environment and it is one of volatility, then oftentimes people will grow up to be volatile, violent, sometimes aggressive. So that is a tale as old as time. That is a fact as old as time, okay, that we are products of our environment. No, I'm not saying there's not instances where people grew up around that and they decide they don't want to be that and do a 180, turn their lives around, and they grow up to be completely different people, and I have a ton of respect for people that do that. And there are tons of people that make it through that and past that to become better individuals, so I'm not speaking in a vacuum here as though there aren't exceptions to the rule. But in Diddy's case, obviously product of his environment, okay? And I think you'll see that when we read this first paragraph here. So Sean Combs is his mother's child, according to Tim Patterson, a close friend who lived with the embattled Bad Boy Records label founder in the 70s. Janice, it's either Janice or Janice Combs, was famous for throwing parties at her home in Mount Vernon, New York, that were especially popular with pimps, drug dealers, and the other unsavory types. It wasn't uncommon for the boys, still quite young at this time, to naively walk into rooms to find partygoers having sex. That was just a Saturday night, Patterson said. The legend of those first freak-offs is among the headline-grabbing revelations in Diddy, The Making of a Bad Boy. Again, not condoning, not saying, well, it's Diddy's mom's fault. That's why he turned out that way, even though definitely could have something to do with it. Could he have made different choices and, not chosen to use his and abuse his power and use and abuse other people at the expense of him being a control freak and a sex freak and all the rest of it? Absolutely, he could have. He obviously didn't make that choice. But as far as where it rooted for him, where it rooted from, I mean, imagine that. Now, think about somebody like Diddy, whose mother was known to throw parties every Saturday night where you had people like pimps, probably prostitutes. I mean, anywhere there's pimps, there's prostitutes. Anywhere there's pimps, there's women that are willing to do XYZ for money, right? And imagine being at that age and seeing these men as role models who objectified women, forced women basically to do sexual acts for money, okay? And obviously there's an element of aggression and violence that goes along with being a pimp, I'm sure. I've never been a pimp, but obviously there's some of that goes along with it as well. And imagine being a young kid, and I don't know exactly how old he was. I mean, this is in the 70s. And if he's 55 years old, I mean, you're talking about, I was born in 76 and I'm 48. I know P. Diddy's something like 54, 55. So if he's 7 years older than me, I would have been just being born in the 70s. So you're talking about a kid that probably 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, right? During this age, seeing stuff like that, seeing people drinking, seeing pimps come in, drugs everywhere. You're walking into bedrooms and there's adults having sex. This is the type of thing that would have flipped on switches in him of things that really an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old kid shouldn't even be thinking about at that time in his life, right? And obviously that could be, an indication as to why he ended up kind of going down the path that he did. So the next one that I want to look at, and again, this is all discussion but somehow more upsetting than this shocking documentary's anonymous interviews with alleged assault victims of Combs, more on their claims later, is the recurring presence of psychoanalyst Carolyn West, whose main job is to tie Combs' alleged horrors to childhood trauma. By her reckoning, it goes all the way back to Combs' father, Melvin, an associate of the Harlem drug kingpin Frank Lucas. A sharp dresser, a ladies' man who went by the nickname Pretty Boy, Melvin was arrested in 1971 for drug possession and let go as his crew's $5 million heroin distribution chain was busted. Less than a year later, Melvin was found shot to death. And the word on the street was he was killed for snitching on the whole operation. Lucas makes a point of rejecting this in his biography, calling Melvin one of the few people I considered a friend. So that's another example of, the early life of P. Diddy. And this happened when P. Diddy was 3 years old, that his father was violently shot and killed, and then he grows up in the house with his mother, who throws freak-off parties every Saturday night where there's prostitutes, where there's pimps, where there's people drinking, doing drugs, having sex, all of it. They're exposed to this at 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, Again, not condoning it, people, just sharing my opinion, from a psychoanalytical perspective of why Sean Diddy Combs may have become the control hungry, sexual abusing, violent man that he became. These things are an indicator as to how that came to be and how he came to be who he ended up becoming, right? And that's all I'm looking at here. So I'm going to share this one, then that's going to be it. This is the one that has to do with the R&B artist Al B. Sure. And when I heard this story, I was like, wow. Because I'm imagining myself in Albie Shure's situation, and if someone were to do something like that or say something like that to me in that way, in that particular setting, I mean, major red flags right out of the gate would have popped up everywhere, you know. Um, anyway, best known for the stage name Albie Shure, Brown is a prominent foil in Combs' villain arc. The New Jack Swing superstar was climbing the R&B charts as Combs was starting out with his Uptown Records deal. In one of the many wry asides, Brown recalls being at a recording session as his girlfriend Kim Porter was holding their newborn son, Quincy, when Combs walked in and said, clear enough for bystanders in the room to hear, this is quote, I wish I had a beautiful girl like that. Cut to years later, Combs on Top of the World is introducing Porter as his girl and Quincy as his son. Quincy, Albie Shure's biological son. He walks in and says something like that, and then years later, he has that exact girl and is calling that exact baby his son, right? And listen, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of stepdads out there that refer to their stepsons or adopted sons as their sons. They are their sons, but it's a much more sinister drive behind this for someone like P. Diddy. Brown remained close with Porter until her death in 2018, which conspiracy theorists blame on Combs. And even though pneumonia was determined to be the official cause of Porter's death, that hasn't stopped Brown from suggesting foul play over the years. In the documentary, as he has in other venues, Brown straight up calls Porter's death murder. And then, quote, says, am I supposed to say allegedly? He purrs into the camera. So, I mean, imagine that. You're sitting there with your woman, and your woman is holding your newborn child, and some guy walks in, a guy like that, who's this big up and coming guy in the music industry, comes in and says something, I wish I had a beautiful girl like that, where everybody else is sitting around listening and hearing this, And again, it's one of those things where hindsight is 2020, and hearing that now is aged very poorly, right? At the time, people probably didn't know what was to come of him throughout the years, So it may have been one of those things where it just seemed like he was being friendly, didn't make anything else of it. People sitting around probably laughed it off, ha ha ha, and then, cut years later, now he's with that exact woman calling that baby his child when it's actually the child of R&B artist Albie Shure. And it's one of those things where in this documentary, Albie Shure seems to be quite prevalent in this documentary, discussing being the father of Quincy, being the biological father of Quincy, and then obviously Combs ended up marrying Kim Porter, who is the mother of Quincy, Albie Shure's biological son. Obviously, he had some dealings throughout the years with Sean Puffy Combs. So I'm not like dying to see the documentary, but I am interested in hearing that part of it. And too, because I met Albie Shure. I'm not like boys with him, but I spent a few hours with him at a studio at one point, and he seemed like a really good guy. I don't know him on like a personal level at all. It was just a brief, like, I can say I met that guy. I've been around that guy for a few hours in a studio at one point. And this is, 25 years ago. I was in my early 20s when this happened. But I want to say this before we close things out. I've heard a lot of people saying online, oh, I don't want to support these documentaries because what if the documentaries is P. Diddy getting paid off of these documentaries? And because if he's getting paid, I don't want to support that, blah, 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 this and that. And I mean, that's fair. That is a fair statement. But I did some digging on that. And I looked online, and a gentleman named Brett Hampton, who studied screenwriting and movie directing at Sherwood Oaks College, has the most upvoted answer on Quora. You know, it's that platform where you ask a question and then people come on and respond to it, and then the best answers get upvoted and stuff. That's, similar to Reddit, I think, in that way. But anyway, the question is, are documentary filmmakers required to reach out to the documentary's subject? He says no. If they interview people who know the subject, get licensed to use footage or interviews of the subject, they don't need their permission. And he gives an example of Woody Allen. I promise you, Woody Allen neither liked nor gave permission to the recent documentary on him. Same thing for the President Clinton and Hillary Clinton being portrayed in the new FX series Impeachment. It's dramatic, but still they didn't give permission, as well as numerous other films and documentaries about Princess Diana, etc., etc., etc. So basically what he's saying is that these documentaries that are being done about Diddy, and Diddy being the subject, he stands to reap no monetary gain or monetary benefit about the documentaries. Okay? So don't be one of those people that if you want to see it, if you're curious, if you don't, you don't, and you just won't watch it. But if you're one of those people that's curious to see what's in the documentaries, if it has any information you've not heard yet, that sort of thing, don't feel guilty about watching it for fear that it's somehow going to monetarily benefit P. Diddy, because that's not the case. Just because he's the subject of it, these filmmakers have certain creative rights that allow them to be able to do what they do, as long as they get the certain particular licenses to use certain footage and stuff like that. They don't have to say anything to P. Diddy, with permission from P. Diddy, or pay P. Diddy anything for making a documentary about him. So anyway, that's it. I might check it out. I don't currently have Peacock. I might sign up for a day so I can watch it, and then just not have Peacock anymore after that. Cancel my subscription, but or do like a 7-day trial or something if they have something like that. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. If you would please subscribe to the channel. If you would share the content. Anytime it gets shared, that helps me out a whole lot, and I would absolutely appreciate it. Like the video, comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about this. All right, I will see you guys on the next one. Have a good day. Peace.